we're putting an emphasis on the small with the science and technology tonight. So we're going to talk about microelectronics next. We are very honored to have Jim Lamb, who is a corporate technical fellow at Brewer Science in Rolla, Missouri, here on the library stage tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, tonight I'm going to take you on a little bit of an adventure. I'm going to get down to what the heart of the microelectronic is. You saw it earlier in Richie's presentation, the transistor, and how that has changed our lives so much. Hopefully for the better. I realize there's some things out there that we have to figure out how to deal with yet, but we will see that. So this is going to be about small structures and the great impact it's had on society, in our technology, our learning, and our understanding. So first we're going to take off and we're going to go to the cosmos. So we want to, there's so much learning that's gone on in the last 15, 20 years about our universe, how it works, how we started off from the Big Bang, and how galaxies are expanding. This is a picture taken by the Hubble where they focus in a dark spot of the sky where they didn't think anything existed. It was a 10-day exposure on their camera. 10 days to collect enough light to bring forth this image, seen in thousands of galaxies. And these galaxies are here go back to about 400,000 years after the Big Bang. We're looking back in time. The point I want to bring up in this is we have all these wonderful images coming from satellites and observatories in space. There's thousands of them we have pointed out there. We have ground-based observatories pointed out there. And we have all types of the full spectrum of the electromagnetic range frequencies that we're observing. The point is this is an incredible amount of data that has to be captured, saved, and then processed and analyzed for us to make something useful out of it. That's where the transistors come into play. That's where our chips in these systems allow us to store this information, to pull back old archives, to make comparisons of the changes in our observable universe and make conclusions. From that, make models and do simulations. Then we go back out and see, well, did they work? Did our ideas, our theories work? This is how we develop understanding and knowledge. So this is one example, one great area. We'll go to the other extreme, the atom. This is the basic building block of everything. Until we start looking a little deeper, there's little smaller building blocks that make up atoms. So we get into quantum mechanics and subatomic particle physics. This is an example from a collider. We'll actually go and look. This is the Hadron collider, super collider system. Now I want you to pay attention again. Look at all those wires. Everywhere. Multiple sensors. These are your typical Ethernet cables to capture what's going on. And we're capturing subatomic particles that only exist in picoseconds and even smaller time frames. We have to catch all this very quickly, and that's what this design is. Again, that requires our transistors, it requires microelectronics to be able just to capture it, put it in some place we can understand it. One run of this super collider to smash an atom generates enough data for years of research, trying to understand what those particles are. So again, our understanding, our ability to learn what's going on in this realm is driven by, is enabled by our transistors and our microelectronic devices. So I want to talk now about the natural order, our world, ourselves, the things we can see and interact with. Both those other things, it's hard to really interact with space. We can see it way out there, but it's a long way. And the other extreme too, we can't even observe it. We look about subatomic particles, we can only see their interaction with the environment with sensors. We can't actually see those particles with any tools that we have. So we look at the natural world, we have all types of weather models. You can get on your cell phone and set it up so you know if lightning's hitting within 5 miles of it. You have all these kind of technologies that we've developed from our natural world, from both satellites and ground-based systems. For agriculture, agriculture is making some revolutions at this point. A lot of sensing. We've been using satellites to sense what's going on with our fields and our how well our farms are being maintained. But we're also putting ground sensors in now. So we know even that small 10-foot square over there doesn't have enough fertilizer. And this one has too much. And we can make those adjustments in our farming systems so that we don't overdo it and pollute our society. We maybe keep the farms efficient and high yielding. We need that to feed ourselves. The body, and we talk about health. I think we may have a talk on this later. But our ability to understand the body and again collect that information, analyze it, is incredible. And the things that we are doing today. This is a HIV virus. We learn how to fight our enemies with our technology. What's been done with the genetic code and DNA, being able to untangle and understand the programming that's there. It used to take years. The reason why we took so long is our tools were so slow, and even our computer systems able to capture all the data. It took months to just do one genome. Now we can do it in days. And people can send it in. You can get it on Ancestry.com and have it done for you, and they'll send it back in a week or whatever. That's the kind of power that's driven by the small engine in microelectronics. And this is an insulin molecule. This is simulated and modeled. And this is the way a lot of things are done now in industry. We take and build these things, which again requires incredible computer power. But now we can take that molecule and look how it interacts with every other molecule it comes into, what part of it reacts, how it works, make theories about how that is. And then we can go in the lab and test for it. We can validate whether our models work. And by doing that, we end up learning and understanding more, and we keep progressing. So if we look at our world, we talk about the ability to communicate. I can pick my cell phone up and call just about anybody else on the globe. Maybe not everybody, but I don't think it'll be too long when it'll be everybody. Or I can call a bunch of people all at once. I can have a meeting. I can put this conference as we well put it on the internet. You can stream this live to thousands of people, whoever would be interested. All that capability, again, is driven by this engine, this heart in the microelectronic system, and our ability to communicate and obtain data. Stop here at this picture. This is a data farm. So you get at your phone, all of you can do it at the same time and type in the same question to Google, and within a second you've got your answer. This makes that possible. And it makes possible the supercomputing of those molecules I was talking about, to build those models. It makes those things possible. These have hundreds of thousands of microprocessors in each one of these, working together at the same time to process data, to accomplish that. And so again, that's some of what's being driven. Fiber optic world. That's how we can communicate so many things at one time without them running over each other. Is the phenomenon of fiber optics. And basically this comes down to, we have data. We can see the data and the information, the learning. If you really got a penchant for it, you can get online and just learn anything you want. I have to cross-check facts places. But you can learn so much. And what's made it possible and accessible again is mobile. We talk about Wi-Fi. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look on the inside of one of these smartphone devices and look what makes them work. And we're going to go right down to the transistor and kind of give you an idea of what's going on there and where we're going for the next generation of electronics. So we're going to cut this apart. We're going to pull out the circuit board with the primary CPU on it, and then we're going to tear the cover off of that CPU and look inside. What we're going to see is a silicon chip. This is on a piece of silicon, maybe a millimeter thick, approximately that. The process is typically done on a 300 millimeter or 12-inch piece of silicon. That's ultra smooth, polished, flat, and extremely clean. When we build these cost a lot of money to build, and we don't want to have low yield in these systems. So everything basically has to be near perfect in what we're going to do. So we're going to dive in. We're going to cut through, we're going to look at one of these. This is a CPU, likely in some of your cell phones out there right now. And all I want you to do is catch a glimpse that there's different parts of this device. These have different transistors and different bits built in them, have to be built up along with the other ones. And the main lines you're seeing there are the wires. So this is a dense connection of wires. So if we look at a cross section of it, this is what we're going to see. Down here is your transistor. It's invisible to you. You maybe see where they're touching down on it. It's too small to see in this SEM. We have to get connected from that very tiny world that's there out to the real world that we live in. So we have to build this up by layer with different metal interconnects. And so we have metal post, then we have more wires, metal post and wires. All of this is like tinker toys you have to build with to build up the structures, but at this very small scale. And as you come up to the chip, you have to bring it out to the level that you can integrate it into our scale. So that's what's going on here. So we have in this device 9 levels of metal, 9 layers of wiring. There's also 10 layers of interconnect, and there's a whole lot of other device layers in here on the transistor, which we're going to look at now. So if you look at the transistor, I zoomed by that one a little faster than I intended to, but you can, this is the same structure here. So what we're looking at here is the Finfet transistor. This is the smallest structure. When we talk about, you may hear somebody say, we make state-of-the-art technologies a 14 nanometer technology. They usually have a nanometer size. What that really means, that's the smallest structure that's on that device that we're making. And that happens to be in these fins right here under this transistor, in this transistor. And that's about 14 nanometers of state-of-the-art today. And we have to make them all over. Each chip of the type that's up here has 3.3 billion transistors on it. They all have to work. They can't have a drop of dust, a speck of anything get in them, or that chip will be bad. It won't work. And you'll lose money. And we see people are trying to make these. So we have to replicate this process at this very small scale over the full surface of that 12-inch wafer. And then when we look at a fab, you'll see that, oh, we have to do that on 200,000 of those wafers every month. I want to give you, Rishi did some of this a little bit ago, but what's the size of this? Go ahead. This large blue circle is 10 times smaller than we can see with our naked eye. It's the size of a hair. This size that you can see with the naked eye is about the size of a hair. You can't really resolve below that. That's 10 times bigger than what we made microelectronics with back in 1970. I came into the game about 1984. Where are we? Right in here. So that would have been structures in this pink and blue area. We talk about 14 nanometers. This is a little dot at the end. The next technology we're working on, we'll talk about a little bit, is 7 nanometers. So it's below that dot size. That's what we're building these things on. You look at an optical microscope, that's as far as you can see with it. So all the work we're doing is at size and scales that we can't see in our, without very special tools. So I'll have to zoom on here a bit. So how do we do this today? This is how we do it today. We use a 193 nanometer stepper. And this is a tool that exposes. So we have a laser in here. It's coming through a mask system and coming through this long tower of lenses. So it works like a camera. We put a material on our silicon, and we're going to shine that light through a mask and put that image on the silicon. This is about as small as we can reliably print. That's 4 times smaller than the wavelength of light we're using to print it with. On top of that, the images we're wanting to get at 14 nanometers, so we've got to take those down about another 14 notches too, or another 4 notches to get what we want. So the way we do that is what they call self-aligned double pattern. We grow a layer conformally on here, and we have to etch it off, etch it out of here, and etch this out of here. That's like 3 different etch processes, and this deposition layer to get what we call double pattern. To get down to the size that we have the state-of-the-art today, we had to do that again. So we take this structure and repeat that process, and we can get down to about this size. And that's about as small as we can get. So one of the things we're working on is called block copolymer chemistry. So instead of trying to do that with physical structures, we're going to replace all those extra process steps by taking a chemical material that has affinity for itself and has a different affinity on the other arm. And by the length of that piece, when we heat these systems up after we coat them, they self-organize into these kind of structures. So what does that look like? And that's how we do the pattern at such a small scale. So if we look here in this process, there's a problem with it though. It's random. It's like fingerprints. We can make these small structures, but they're not where we want them. So we have to do some work to get them aligned. So we'll build these structures that we had up here. If you remember those 44 nanometer structures, we'll etch those down to very small structures. And then we'll run this process on here. And we'll fill that whole area up at one time with one process with the lines we're wanting to get. So we really reduce the cost and reduce the number of process steps in building these and get down to a 7 nanometer device. This is a major plant, just to give you a size and scale of what it looks at a semiconductor plant where they're doing this. I wanted to include here, there's a lot of work that goes on. Back to what I talked about earlier with modeling and simulation, that has to be done first. We do everything on the computer in a simulator, the complete design, we do it in small blocks, and we add the other blocks we need to make sure it works in our simulations. If it doesn't work there, it doesn't get printed. It costs too much money to make the mask sets for all those layers. You're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars just for the mask set to try out to make a chip. So we have to prove it works there. This is what the inside of the line looks like. And anybody know why we have to have these white suits on? It's not protecting us. It's protecting those wafers from all the junk that comes off of us. So back to where we started. I wanted to talk just briefly, and this is about the last of it, is this modern marvel of technology, our ability to do these very in-depth simulations, capturing information data, turning that into usable things that we can look up and use and learn from. It's driven by these key factors. And this is why we keep going smaller. We want to increase performance in the same area. If I still worked with that 1970 10 micron line and needed 3.3 billion transistors, I couldn't fit them in this building. It'd be too big. So we had to do the shrinking that made that possible. Now we put that in your phone, in your pocket. But for that to be useful, we have to reduce the power consumption of it. If it's not, you can't make a battery small enough to fit in your pocket that would support it for more than a couple of minutes. So that technology had to come, and we had to reduce the power consumption of it. And speed. If you lived with the internet in the 90s till today, you know the importance of speed. We had to get all those parts that needed to talk to each other closer. The further they are, the more power they consume. The further they are, the slower the speed. So all that goes together, and that gives us our reduced size. So we finally put these in our pocket. We put them on our arm. It won't be long till you can run a chip on here. 10 years, you can probably have more power than you have on your a smartphone on a watch. And maybe you'll just beam it into your head and have a screen. But the data analysis, this is a data bank here, storing data. It's just rooms and rooms of these kind of systems that make it possible for us to ask those questions or to hit Facebook or the post and have it. So my point was that all these aspects of our world, our communication, how far we can see out and collect information of our cosmos, and how small we can see down under the atom to our natural world, is all really possible that we can pick this up on here from what we do at that smallest scale of transistor. Thank you.